Welcome to Maps of Metropolis, brought to you by Factateri Urban Lab. Today, we're mapping out a space that's becoming more and more important every day.
Yeah.
The geopolitics of digital territories.
Yeah, it really is fascinating how our digital lives, are actually reshaping the very idea, the very concept of physical space, especially when we talk about cities. I
Yeah.
mean, we're so used to borders that we can see,
Yeah.
physical things.
Yeah.
But the digital world, it's almost like it's drawing these new lines in the sand,
Okay.
but these lines, they're made of data. They're made of code.
So let's unpack this a little bit.
Yeah,
We're talking about how software is essentially everywhere in a city now.
it really is.
It's not just on our phones anymore, right?
No, it's everywhere.
And this research on code space
Yeah.
has some really, really eye-opening examples
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
of this.
Think about something like as simple as a traffic light.
Okay.
I mean, in the past, it was just a timer, right?
Yeah.
Maybe reacting to pressure plates in the road. But now, they're like nodes on this network.
Hmm.
And they're controlled by software that's factoring in all this stuff, real-time traffic flow, how many pedestrians are moving, even things like, emergency vehicle routes.
Wow.
So that software directly shaping how the city functions, how
Yeah.
we move through it.
So it's not even just that we use apps to navigate the city anymore.
Right.
The city itself is becoming like an app.
Yeah, exactly.
And that has some big implications for control, surveillance.
Huge, yeah.
One of the sources we looked at really kind of dives into this, talking about how digital surveillance is almost becoming this inevitable part of city planning.
Well, and what I think is really fascinating here is that it's always presented as a way to make things better, right?
Right.
To optimize, make things more efficient.
Like we're going to optimize traffic,
Exactly.
manage resources
Make
better.
things safer, right?
Right.
But all this efficiency, it comes with a bit of a trade-off because the same systems that can, say, ease traffic congestion
Yeah.
can also be used to, well, track your movements, even try to predict where you're going.
So it's like on the one hand, you
Yeah.
know, you have this potential for cities that are incredibly efficient, they run really well.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it feels a little bit like, I don't know, living in a SimCity game
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
where somebody is always watching you.
And where the rules of the game might not be entirely fair.
Right.
The research points out that this kind of like digital urban planning
Yeah.
could very easily end up prioritizing certain citizens, certain groups over others.
Almost like a high-tech version of redlining.
Exactly.
Right.
I mean, imagine a city where facial recognition at, important intersections
Yeah.
gives certain people faster access to different points of the city, or where what you do online, like your online activity influences, say, your access to public services. That's the kind of future we could be headed towards if we're not careful.
That's a little bit scary, honestly.
Yeah.
And it makes me think about another point that one of the papers really challenged, and that's this whole idea of the internet as a borderless world.
Right.
This idea that it's all just
Cyberspace.
cyberspace.
A separate reality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if physical space is becoming so intertwined with the digital, where does that leave the internet?
Yeah, I mean, it's a dangerous illusion to think that data just exists in the cloud, free from any physical constraints.
Right.
Every email you send, every purchase you make online, all of it, it relies on a very real, very physical infrastructure.
Of course, yeah.
We're talking servers, cables, data centers,
That's
and
right.
guess what? Those things, they have locations.
So every time I hear about, like, a new data center being built,
Right.
that's not just about storage space.
No.
It's also about, like, staking a claim
Yeah.
in the digital landscape.
Precise. And this is where cities become really, really interesting.
Okay.
Because they're not just places where people live and work anymore, right?
Right.
We're becoming like these key battlegrounds in this fight to control the internet itself. Who gets to store the data? Who gets to set the rules for how it's accessed?
Right.
Those are huge geopolitical questions.
Absolutely.
They really are. And, it's not even just about controlling those physical spaces, right?
Right.
Where the data actually lives.
Yeah.
It's also about how we understand it, how we even interpret that data in the first place.
Okay.
And this leads us to, another really big idea from a lot of these sources, which is the role of big data in all of this.
Okay. Big data. It's one of those terms you hear everywhere.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
But what does it actually mean, like, in this context when we're talking about cities and the digital world?
So imagine trying to understand an entire city but you can only look at like a single grain of sand. That's kind of what traditional research was like, you know?
Like we could only see a tiny little piece of the puzzle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But now with big data, it's like having this satellite image
Okay.
of the entire beach, every single grain of sand. You can see it all at once.
Oh.
We're talking a massive, massive data sets generated by everything.
Everything.
From our online activity to sensors in the environment, you name it.
So it's not just about the amount of data.
Yeah.
It's that it's coming from so many different places.
It's the variety, yeah.
So it paints this much more, I don't know, like complete complex picture.
Exactly. And this is where things get really, really interesting for research, I think. Because some experts are actually calling this like a fourth paradigm of science.
Paradigm. What does that even mean?
So instead of starting with a hypothesis, like, I think this is happening.
Right.
And then you design an experiment to test it.
Right. The scientific method.
Exactly. But with this, we're letting the data itself guide us.
So instead of saying, I think this causes that, we're saying, let's look for patterns in all this data.
Exactly.
And see what connections emerge.
It's a completely different way of thinking about knowledge, about how we create knowledge. And it has this huge potential to change how we understand cities.
Yeah.
But, and there's always a but, right?
Right. There's got to be a trade-off somewhere.
It comes with its own challenges, too.
Like what? I mean, I imagine just sifting through all that data is a nightmare.
It's not even just the technical stuff, the processing and analyzing it, although that's huge.
Yeah.
The real challenge is, how do you interpret it all?
Okay.
Because data isn't neutral. It's shaped by how it's collected, right?
Right.
The algorithms used to analyze it, even the questions we ask.
So we could end up finding patterns that just confirm what we already think.
Exactly.
Or even worse, like letting algorithms make decisions.
Right.
Based on data that's like incomplete.
Oh, yeah.
Or biased in the first place.
That's the danger. That's what we have to watch out for. That's why it's so important to come at big data with a critical eye.
Okay.
You can't just accept it, you know?
Right. Question everything.
We have to be aware of its limitations and constantly be asking ourselves, okay, who's collecting this? What are their motivations? And what might be missing here?
It's like that saying, garbage in, garbage out. You put bad data in, you get bad results out.
Exactly. Even the most powerful algorithm in the world is only as good as the data it's working with.
Right. So how do we make sure we're not using big data to just like reinforce existing inequalities?
That's a great question. And that's where disciplines like geography are so important.
Okay. How so?
Because geographers, they're trained to think about space, right?
Right.
About how power operates through space, how different populations experience it.
Okay.
And those same skills, they're absolutely essential for navigating the digital realm.
So for example, instead of just looking at like where traffic is the worst, we need to ask, okay, who actually lives in those areas? Are they being disproportionately impacted by these new systems?
Precisely. It's about bringing that critical spatial lens to bear on all this data.
Yeah, I get it.
Always remembering that behind all these numbers, there are real people, real communities whose lives are being shaped by all of this.
You've mentioned some of the potential downsides, which are, pretty serious.
Yeah.
But I mean, there must be some positive applications of all this technology too, right?
Oh, absolutely. The potential for good is huge.
Like what? Give me some hope here.
Imagine being able to optimize public transportation in real time.
Okay.
To reduce wait times, make it more accessible for everybody.
Okay, that would be amazing.
Or using data from environmental sensors to identify pollution hotspots and then actually do something about them.
Wow.
The possibilities are really exciting when you think about it.
It's like having this real-time dashboard for the entire city.
Yeah, exactly.
With the potential to make things more efficient, more sustainable, more equitable. But again, it sounds like it all comes down to how we use this technology.
It always does. And one of the things that comes up again and again in these sources is this risk of making existing inequalities even worse.
Like a digital divide, where the people who already have access to the best technology and the skills to use it benefit the most, while everyone else gets left behind.
Precisely. And it's not even just about, having the latest phone or whatever. It's about digital literacy.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
It's about who has the knowledge and skills to actually navigate this increasingly complex digital world, to understand how these systems work and to advocate for their rights within those systems.
So it's like we're building new cities in this digital realm.
We are.
And we need to make sure those cities are designed with everyone in mind.
I love that. That's a great way to put it.
not just a select few.
Absolutely.
So it's not enough to just kind of slap digital technology onto our existing cities.
Right. It's got to be more intentional than that.
We need to be asking, how can we use this technology to create more just, equitable, sustainable cities for everyone?
Exactly. And that requires a real fundamental shift in thinking.
Okay, so how do we do that? Where do we even start?
Well, that's where this concept of digital rights comes in.
Okay, this is something that comes up in several of the
It's
sources.
huge, yeah.
What are digital rights?
So digital rights are basically an extension of our fundamental human rights into the digital realm, right?
So the rights we have in the physical world should also apply to the digital world.
Exactly. Things like privacy, freedom of expression, access to information.
Makes sense.
These rights are just as important online as they are offline.
If not more so, right?
Exactly, because so much of our lives are online now.
Right.
And this is where we see a lot of tension and debate right now, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Governments, corporations, they're all trying to figure out how to balance these rights with things like security,
Right.
economic growth, national sovereignty.
So there are a lot of competing interests at play here.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why it's so important to have these conversations out in the open,
Yeah.
to bring these issues to light, and to demand that our leaders, our tech companies, are transparent.
Right, accountable.
Exactly, because in the end, it's about making sure this technology benefits all of us.
Right, not just a select few.
Exactly. It's about reclaiming our agency in this digital age, you know?
Yeah, I like that.
Making sure technology serves humanity, not the other way around.
It's kind of like we're at this crossroads, right?
Yeah.
And we're trying to figure out, like, what kind of digital world do we actually want to live in?
I think that's a great way to put it, yeah. Because one of the things that all these sources really emphasize is that we can't just sit back and let, you know, the tech companies and the politicians make all these decisions for us.
Right.
Everybody has a role to play in shaping this digital future.
So what can we actually do? I mean, it's easy to look at all of this and just feel totally overwhelmed, like, oh yeah, like we're just along for the ride, you know?
It can feel that way for sure.
Yeah.
But honestly, I think one of the most important things is just being aware, you know?
Okay, aware of what?
Like understanding how these technologies work, how they're being used, how they're impacting our everyday lives.
So education.
Yeah, exactly. That's always the first step, right? Toward actually being able to do something about it.
Knowledge is power.
Exactly. Okay, so what else?
Well, we can also, like, be more mindful, right, of our own, our own digital footprint.
What do you mean?
Well, just think about the apps you use every day, the data you're constantly sharing, the choices you make online, right?
Yeah.
Because it all adds up.
Every little thing.
Every click, every swipe, it all matters in a way.
Wow. Okay. So it's not just about these like big abstract ideas.
Right.
It's about the small decisions we make every day.
Exactly. And don't underestimate, the power of collective action.
Right.
Like supporting organizations that are out there fighting for digital rights.
Yeah.
Contacting your representatives, making your voice heard, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And making a stink about it if you have to.
Exactly. Because these issues, I mean, yeah, they seem complicated, but at their core, this is about basic human rights.
Right. It's about making sure that the digital world we're building reflects,
Exactly.
the values that we want to see in the physical world.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Okay, good.
That's a future worth fighting for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is.
Well, this has been incredible.
Yeah, it's been great.
A really, really fascinating deep dive into, this whole world of digital territories and how it's all playing out.
It's a fascinating topic, really is.
It is, and it's clear that this is a landscape that's constantly changing.
Oh,
right?
It's absolutely, yeah.
But one thing's for sure, it's a space we all inhabit now.
And we all have a role to play in shaping its future.
We really do, yeah.
Well said.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us.
This has been great.
On Maps Metropolis.
Yeah.
And until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep demanding, a digital world that works for everyone.